about the differences of commodities versus securities. And here's what he told us in terms of oversight there. Watch this.
For too long, we've had the Gary Genslers of the world regulating by enforcement, claiming that every digital asset is a security. And Chairman Paul Atkins and I really disagree with that view. We believe that most crypto assets in the markets today are commodities. These are digital assets that maybe were issued as part of a securities transaction, but they trade a lot like oil, gas, and other commodities in our markets. And the information that is prevalent to and important to trading these assets comes from the markets at large. It's not coming from a single source of information, as you see with the capital markets with an issuer. And so we need to build markets that allow for these assets to trade with clear rules of the road, and we can't regulate by enforcement anymore.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that's why the Genius Act was celebrated so much, because you did make a clear delineation of what is a commodity and what is a security. So talk to us about how we should look at that and what specific differences you have identified.
Yeah, well, so so the Genius Act was great. It focused on stable coins and put them squarely in the banking sector. So my good friend and controller of the currency, Jonathan Gould, is working diligently on coming up with that regulatory framework for stable coins. With respect to other sorts of things, I gave a speech a few months ago delineating what we are going to be working on and coming out with here shortly is a taxonomy, so-called, as to what are digital commodities versus tokenized securities, so we can give clarity to the marketplace as to what it is, and end, as Chairman Selig was talking about, end the regulation through enforcement that has so long bedeviled this whole area of financial services, even predating the whole crypto world and going back, to decades, as between, what's in the CFTC realm, what's in the SEC's realm. So there are digital commodities and digital tools and digital collectibles that we have described and will be outlining in regulation. And then we have tokenized securities. So the first three clearly within the CFTC's rule remit, and then tokenized securities in the SEC's remit. So this is one of maybe the only time that a regulatory agency is voluntarily ceding clear jurisdiction to another regulatory agency. But again, we are out to harmonize the rules as between the SEC and the CFTC, giving clarity and certainty to the innovators and to investors in this particular area, so that people can develop their products in the United States rather than feel that they have to go offshore to do that. So if we can do this here in the United States under American law, I think that will be best for investors, best for the financial markets, and best for innovators, and help them save time and money.
Absolutely, and that's why Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent this week said, look, we need to get on board and get on the same team, otherwise this market moves to El Salvador. But, the idea of tokenized securities is really interesting to me, because I'm seeing tokenization ideas in basically every market. I mean, are we expecting all markets to ultimately be tokenized? And it appears that if you do have a slice of a security, a tokenizing markets, that it perhaps could open up the floodgates of more participation in the market, perhaps enabling smaller investors to get involved. So can you walk us through tokenization and what a token is in terms of a security?
Well, so a token basically is a smart contract, and by smart contract meaning it's a digital representation of an underlying asset. And so in the case of securities, which are traded now electronically for the most part, although some people still have stock certificates, paper certificates in their safe deposit box or wherever. So all of those are representations of a share of ownership in a company or some other sort of entity, mutual fund or whatnot. And so whether that's in paper form or on a computer resting at the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, or what's tokenized mean is it's on-chain, on a blockchain, where there the possibility whether you have stable coins, tokenized money market mutual funds, or tokenized bank deposits, the possibility of having an on-chain clearance and settlement of the transaction that is agreed to by the two parties, and then actually the clearance and settlement of that, to have that on-chain in an immediacy type of a T0 sort of environment potentially for many instruments. I think that's very exciting for the prospect of de-risking the financial services sector. For years and years, that gap between the transaction date and then the clearance and settlement date, when the money's exchanged and booked, and then the two parties then are square as to the transaction. It used to be 5 days, 5 business days. Now we're at one business day. If we get down to T0 for many instruments, that'll be just a huge positive change for the marketplace. So that's what excites me about this, and the investors will decide what's the most convenient. Is a stable coin how they want to affect their transaction? Do they want to use like a debit card, a bank deposit, a tokenized bank deposit that gets debited from their account immediately, or some other form of payment and delivery? So that's, I think, the prospect that is really exciting for the future, and we're at the cusp of that right now to be able to put that into effect.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. So what specific rules or regulations are you envisioning in that space for tokenization? Is it the same regulation book that we have seen with regard to all securities? How does the regulatory framework change?
Well, basically, again, we're just migrating from, we already have enabled digital representation of the old-fashioned paper stock certificate. So that's one thing that has proven, really over the last, 40 years now or more, proven to be a real step forward, for financial services, for global trading, and that's helped to propel the marketplace in, I think, a very good way, enabled growth and de-risking, as I was talking about earlier. And so now the next step, onto on-chain, on blockchain, using the distributed ledger technology that is what's behind, when we talk about the blockchain. That itself, I think, is the next step, and is, as I said, very exciting. We will be adjusting our rules, and those are tweaks, I would say, but at the ground, what we have to do is then give certainty to, again, what's a security, what's a commodity, and I don't want to have any more warring factions as between the two, fortresses of the SEC on one side, CFTC on the other, and a no man's land in between, where over the years so many products have just languished and then just never gotten anywhere out of that no man's land. So if we have harmonized rules from SEC and CFTC, mutual recognition, maybe what I've been talking about is having a super app type of concept where we have substituted compliance as between CFTC and the SEC, that will be an amazing environment then for people to not have to worry so much about where they are registered, but to have the certainty that they're in the United States under United States laws, and they can go forth and do their innovations, and then let investors in the marketplace decide what is the best way for that investor to interact with the marketplace for his own benefit.
And of course, you've got to add to the CFTC the agricultural department as well, right? The
exactly.
And why is the ag department so important here? What role does that have here?
Well, that's where the whole futures markets started, was back where farmers wanted to hedge their exposure to the weather or whatever else, and to the market itself. So that gave birth eventually in the 1970s to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and to their rule book. And so they have a lot of rules that apply, to those markets. So that's great. And obviously the securities markets have been around, for centuries. And so there are a lot of rules that have built up and practices over those centuries. So the two can coexist, should coexist, must coexist, because there's a lot of back and forth with traders, from the two markets. They're very intertwined, which is great. And that's part of the amazing aspect of modern financial markets. So we intend to support that, to help people innovate. And it's been too long for this uncertainty to weigh down on innovators. And there are so many possibilities. If the government can get its act together to actually talk to each other and collaborate and harmonize their rules. But that's what Chairman Seelig and I are out to do, and we can achieve that. And we can go forth under the authorities that we currently have, that Congress has given both of these agencies over the last several decades.
Well, it's so important. And in the middle